All right, welcome back to Broke Bets. This is our recap of Lute versus Muhammad 2, and we made some money this week. We got 4.13 units in return. A couple things didn't fall our way, but let's get into it. Straight bets were 100% this week. We got Kai Barallo, was a great underdog pick. Got its profit there. Jordan Levitt edged out a decision. I didn't think he actually was going to win, but somehow we pulled it off. Garcia, I wish I kind of went with 2 units on this one, and his odds also flipped closer to fight time, but we still managed to get that one pretty easy money. My lock that I mentioned hit. We got Boudet and Close. Those two were pretty easy money. The DQ possibility was a scare, but we had a 2-unit bet, good profit. And then we lost money on Baeza. I guess I put too much trust in Baeza. But we got Devin Clark right. Moving down. Luque, obviously that one fell apart. Probably wish I strung together things a little differently, but that's a little bit too late to say that. Sabatini got the dub, though. And Carson's bet here hit. He had Sabatini, Close, and Silva. That came together. And my basic one, which was Levitt by sub, missed. I did a decision, no bet on these 3 guys. Boudet was a technical decision, and Luque went to decision. And then Knight lost by KO, which kind of surprised me, so we lost that. And then for the final bet, Carson had this one. He had Boudet to win, and Estelle Nunez versus Sam Hughes to go over 2.5. And boom. So these were our bets that hit for this week. And we'll now go into our reactions for each fight. Starting with our main event, kind of went somewhat how we expected it to. You know, I picked Luque by knockout, and Carson picked Bilal by decision. And fuck, Carson beat me this time. Not surprised by the result at all. Luque almost had him in round 3, which was my pick of KO round. It kind of was similar to like the Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz thing, where he had him stumbled and he really didn't like capitalize fast enough on it. I mean, he was pretty hurt. I don't really regret my pick on Luque, because you know it could have easily been a knockout in round 3 at one point. And something that also shook me during the fight was that after round 3, the odds swung in favor of Luque when Bilal was already up 2 rounds. So like the live odds was like minus 185 Luque, and Bilal was like plus 150 or something, which I thought was just absurd, considering that Bilal has more ways to get that victory. But obviously people are going to criticize Bilal. I'll obviously critique him quite a bit, but he did what he has to do for a decision. He was just moving laterally across the back of the cage, making it hard for Luque to, you know, really sink in on punches. I think Luque could have done more leg kicks early in the fight. He was already doing some, but to keep them going to, like, reduce his movement as the fight went on. Bilal does kind of a, I don't know if I want to call it scummy, but it's like a thing to win the judges' scorecards where he'll be on the feet for 2 or 3 minutes of a round where striking's, you know, not super dominant one way or the other. And then he'll shoot a takedown at 2 minutes left in the round to hopefully just secure it by that chance alone. He doesn't really do damage, and you know, it's hard to get behind him as a fighter, but personally I feel like this is the highest ranking he's going to find. I guess people, you know, probably been saying that about him for a while, but if you look at who's ahead of him, you know, Leon Edwards, who already was beating him up before that fight went to a no contest. Colby's going to be the better wrestler, going to have better output. Gilbert, he won't go to the ground with Gilbert, and Hamzat will smash him, and he doesn't have a chance versus Kamaru either. So it's pretty clear, I feel like, for whoever he faces next, he's going to be a pretty big underdog, but Again, not surprised by the decision. Like me and Carson said before this, picking Belal decision probably is the best odds you could find on this. That, and I think that was at plus 280. And my other one I was going to do, other than my parlay, would be Luque KO or sub, which was like plus 140 on FanDuel. And, it's just the way she goes. You kind of have to go with the what-ifs on these fights, and you go the wrong way every once in a while. But wasn't the best fight. Something to watch still. Remember the name or forget the name. I don't know. Belal versus Gilbert next, and Luque versus Masvidal next. Our co-main event for the night was Kai Barallo versus Gadzai Omar Gazayev. And I kind of thought that Gadzai would be able to hold top control on the ground in this fight, and Barallo would kind of have the better grappling to just neutralize it. But I think Barallo is just the bigger guy. He controlled Gadzai on the ground completely. He reversed him one time in the first round, just gnarly. He had knockdowns in the second round. And it was kind of showing the one-dimensionality of Gadzai, where he kind of had a decent overhand and like a right high kick, and it made me a little scared for Kai, like a little bit through the first round, just because when you're that southpaw, it's kind of harder to roll over your front shoulder with those shots. But he was the better fighter all around. We got great odds on this one. The lethal knee was questionable. I feel like people stand one way or the other on that, obviously, but it's always strange when he had his whole hand down, then he's got his fingertips down, kind of coming up off the ground a tiny bit. You could say it's kind of illegal, but it's like it's a hard thing to call, and it's such a split moment decision. I was really happy the way Dan Miragliotta was trying to deal with these in this card, because he easily could have just called it a DQ, because the knee was very damaging. I mean, I think Gadzai for sure, was trying to play it up a little, but why would you go back out there and risk a horrific shot you might take later on? And that knee left a giant mark on his face, but I was happy that Dan Miragliotta obviously did it for me to get, the money, but I think DQs are, a tough way to give somebody a loss and somebody else a win. So I thought going to the judges' scorecards is a smart way to do it. And overall, I think Kai would be a great person to bet on in the future. Keep your eyes on him. He's going to be that up-and-comer. Oh, Baeza. Him and Andre Fallo were kind of duking it out for a minute, and he just lost the exchanges. He was the bigger fighter, and he had some heavy shots on Fallo, but I think his boxing and his defensive boxing is just not good. And I guess I was a little bit premature, and I should have seen the red flags going into this, but Baeza kind of reminds me a lot of ways of Dominic Reyes. He hits really hard in some instances, but he kind of gets sloppy with his footwork, and kind of moves around strange. But he had some nice shots in there, but overall he just got outboxed, and I thought the fight got stopped a little bit quick, but in the end I don't think it would have mattered. Falao probably would have gotten him back up to his feet and smacked him down. Baeza too probably could have shot for a takedown earlier in the fight. I know he's got pretty decent stand-up, but if you have an advantage somewhere, it probably would have been on the ground. But I guess credit to Falao, he proved me wrong. And I don't really know where I stand if I would pick him on too much stuff in the future. But he did have some nice shots on Baeza for sure. Not the best performance from Baeza, but way she goes. In our fourth fight, we had Silva versus Wu, and Silva really dominated round one, and then round two became more questionable. I didn't follow this one as much. There was just, I don't know, not as much excitement going on with this. I don't know. I think, Silva has some decent striking, but she got slower as the fight went on. I stayed away from this. Carson got this one right, though. But, decent result. The favorite got it done. Not too much more to say about that. Next fight was Pat Sabatini versus TJ Laramie. I thought TJ Laramie did a pretty decent job for how this was going. The first round I actually gave to Laramie, even though there was a kick knockdown for Sabatini that was really his only moment. And I know you're supposed to store damage first, but in terms of control, I thought Laramie had a little bit better control. And then round 2 went to I thought it was a 10-8 for Sabatini. He was on his back, he was hitting him. He just had full control of him, actually doing damage. Not surprised by this fight. Really used his jiu-jitsu to take advantage of the situation. Sabatini's got some questionable stand-up at moments, but yeah, when that fight gets to the round, obviously he's gonna be the better fighter. And a good result for betting on this one. Had to get those odds early. He spiked to a bigger favorite, but in the end, the result we expected. Next fight was Munir Laziz versus Ange Losa. And I actually thought this fight was the fight of the night. I don't know how Silva versus Wu got it, because in terms of technical striking, this fight was very, very good. A lot of brawling fights are fun to watch, but in this, Losa actually had a great jab to come out there. He was quite a bit smaller than Lazzez, was a big problem in the fight. Lazzez was using his jab to keep at range. He had good body kicks. And he was just a bigger fighter. He had kind of a big torso. Had a little bit more strength than him, but Losa's a guy to pay attention to. I mean, for betting perspective, if he might have had more time on this fight, I wouldn't say he would win, but he could maybe steal a round. It was a 30-27 fight, but he stayed in there well, threw nice jabs, had good hands, really good footwork too, and defensive boxing. A lot of the punches came his way, he deflected, and he has some nice shots on Lazzez, but again, Lazzez just kept pushing forward. That was a really good comeback win for Lazzez. I've seen his fights before. I thought he was impressive. But yeah, I thought this was the fight of the night. These guys went at each other. I know it was 30-27, but not a surprise by the result, but watch out for, I guess, both of these guys. I wouldn't call them exactly title contenders or anything yet, but definitely good strikers in this division. Our next fight was Devin Clark versus William Knight. And, my initial pick was Devin Clark by decision, and then I kind of switched more towards, as the week went on, towards William Knight. Just because William Knight was so big. I mean, he was insanely huge in that fight. Knight held a guillotine in round 1 for about 3 minutes, just a standing guillotine. It was never fully in, but it, just the sheer strength of that little guy. He weighed in at 251, so he had a 30-pound advantage on Clark. So there was a whole lot of red flags going into this one. But as soon as Clark got Knight on his back, and it was just Clark's fight, which is kind of how I expected this was going to go. If it was light and heavyweight, I think it would have been even more dominant. But he had that, and then Clark got a nice finish on the fence, and I was impressed. He's had some hard fights lately, and he's gotten choked out by some people, like I think Anthony Smith, and this is a good comeback fight for him. I don't think really either of them have a future at contending for too much. I don't really know exactly how Knight's career is going to keep going, if he's just going to keep fighting heavyweight. I don't think that should be the move for him, though. But But yeah, this was a leg of the parlay that hit. But I believe Baeza was my other leg that fell apart, which was kind of upsetting. But overall, a good win for Devin Clark. Impressed by seeing him get a knockout. I think he doesn't have too many knockouts, more decisions on his record. Our next fight was Penny Kianzad versus Lena Landsberg. And, actually, Landsberg put up a pretty decent fight for her age and how everything was going. I'll be honest, I didn't watch this one as closely. I kind of was switched off. I didn't have a fantasy inclusion for either of these two or a bet on either one, so I kind of zoned out a bit for moments of the fight, but I think I had it round 1 Kianzad, maybe round 2 Landberg, and then round 3 Kianzad, but good fight overall. Went at each other. Yeah, I don't know. I've seen some people put Kianzad in their bets. I mean, if you would have had Kianzad decision, that was kind of what everyone was going for. I think that was probably like minus 110 though as odds, so not the biggest return, but something to look out for in these cards if you ever see a woman's fight at the wrong decision prop. But in the end, Kianzad gets the job done. In our following fight, Jakar Close made quick work of Brandon Jenkins. He looked awful on the scales, and that was kind of something scary going into this fight, as he had his mouth wide open. He looked like he was dead, and he was hallucinating on the scales. So, something scary when you're, placed a bet already on somebody. But just with Brandon Jenkins' first fight in the UFC and stuff like that, you just kind of got to think Close knows what he's doing. And he's a hell of a fighter. I mean, he's beaten Bobby Green. He was beating Beneil Dariush before that brutal KO. And then came into this one, and I mean, he put a beating on Jenkins, even though Jenkins was tough as they come and stayed in it. I think he probably had about 50 significant strikes in round 1. He dropped him, putting the pressure on. Herb let it go. I think it could have been stopped in round 1. But I was worrying during the first round that he was going to gas out. He was putting all this output on Jenkins, and you just wonder if he could keep it going. But he put the output on him, took about 1 or 2 minutes to breathe, and then went right back at him. So I was happy to see Close back in the winning column, especially after his long layoff. But, he's a good fighter. He has good boxing, good cardio. Definitely always the guy to put your money behind. And I enjoyed the fight, Our next fight was Rafa Garcia versus Jesse Ronson. And I don't know how the odds switched so much for Rafa Garcia. I thought he was going to have a speed advantage. He did. Ronson was just standing still a whole part of the fight. He's just standing still, had his head sitting out in the open, and I picked up Garcia at favorite odds last week, and I was kind of upset that he's all of a sudden an underdog. Took some extra units off my board, and I felt really confident in him. He's a bulldog. The dude can fight. And then obviously this is where more controversy came in, where early in this card just a bunch of bullshit was happening. He had the knee coming up on Ronson, and it was just like the Baralo one where the hand is kind of coming up, and in this case it was Ronson's knee. And Ronson's knee came off the ground for like half a second, and it was right when the knee happened, so it's kind of hard to. It was a good maybe to take a point, but making this a DQ would have been really bad considering the circumstances and how close that was to being legal or illegal. And Garcia just dominated him, and in these close fights, it's really important to know which underdog or which guy to pick, because 2 minutes into that fight, the odds shift in favor of Garcia heavily. So, I saw that beforehand. A lot of people were picking Ronson. I was surprised by. Garcia's a bulldog. Enjoyed the fight. He got me some good fantasy points as a fighter too. I did. I was going to add this fight to go over 2.5, and I pulled it off the board at the last minute, which was fucking awesome. I saved myself a little bit of money. But again, keep your eyes on Garcia. Great betting guy. Good guy to put your money on. Our next fight was Martin Buday versus Chris Big Boy Barnett. I guess his nickname is Beast Boy, but it should be Big Boy. Another fight with controversy, but Buday dominated. I mean, this is exactly why I said he was a lock. Huge height difference. Way stronger. Barnett couldn't get off the fence at all. He didn't have any position to. And the amount of knees that Barnett took right to his gut was just endless. I thought this fight could have been stopped again in the third. I guess, Dan Murtaliata doesn't know about the rib injury, and I don't want to trash Barnett, but I don't know how legitimate the rib injury is. It might have just been a core injury, but anyway, there was a big knee that lands, and you hear Chris Barnett grimacing, and then Buday just hits him more on the ground. Kind of a sign, typically in a fight, I feel like, to stop it, especially when one fighter's dominant. And then following that up, Barnett gets back up to his feet, and he covers up, and elbow lands behind the ear, and here's controversy. I believe that, for one, when someone covers up like that, it's a tough spot to hit them, because you either have to uppercut them below their hands, and they're also turning their back to their head to face you so they don't get struck, which is a weird thing. It was similar to Junior Dos Santos versus Cyril Gane, where Cyril Gane kind of threw the elbow and JDS turned his head, and it made it on the back of the head. This one was planted behind the ear. I don't know if it's legal is the thing, and especially the way Barnett was fighting, he definitely didn't deserve a DQ. But it was just holding him up to the fence, landed right in that weird spot, and of course if Barnett didn't complain about it, the ref's probably going to stop it, and he did stop the fight to review it. I was happy again with Dan Murtaliata handling the situation, but something that annoyed me was I did have Buday on my fantasy team, and a stoppage would have saved a couple of my fantasy teams because he was my MVP on one of them. So he didn't come out with the most points, but if he would have gotten the finish, he would have came out on top. In terms of where we stand with Buday, I don't know if he'll beat as many heavyweights who are his size. He doesn't have the best striking. He does have that clinch control, but Chris Barnett had a hard time moving around in that. But if he's going to face some lower level competition, stick with Buday. He had a decent gas tank too for that. It wasn't very expendable, but overall, like I said, lock. Boom, both me and Carson got a bet on this hit. Another fight in the prelims was Jordan Levitt versus Trey Ogden. I had an underdog bet on Jordan Levitt, and I was honestly surprised by the result. Levitt didn't do hardly anything the whole fight. I mean, he did have 8 leg kicks in a row, but a lot of them were tapping leg kicks. Ogden walked him down, hit him at the body, actually looked for the head. And I think round 3 was for sure for Levitt. Round 2 and round 1 were, in my book, both Ogden, but if the judges want to help me make it, I'll take it, but I thought Ogden did a better job, and then Levitt did his little special boy celebration at the end. Don't want to talk about that too much. But I think I want to say I regret my pick because I did make money on it, but I probably shouldn't have bet on Levitt just with how that fight went. The leg kicks were all he got, and I think he landed 40, but somehow he got it done. When they went to decision, I just didn't expect it. But again, we'll take it. I believe this is our second prelim of the night. We had Sam Hughes versus Stella Nunes. And another fight with controversy, of course. I thought Nunes won round one. Round two, she kind of controlled the first 2.5 minutes. Then the eye poke happened, and then Hughes took over from there on out. There was obviously the point deduction, and I think Hughes won it fair and square, but Nunes came out and she obviously had the better striking, and then she was just doing too much fast twitch fighting, and she slowed down as the fight went on. It's kind of like watching a Giga Chidase fight, where he just kind of does all his output in round one, and then he slowed down as the fight progresses, and that's what happened with Nunes. And Sam Hughes stole this one. Carson had over 2.5 rounds. Boom, it hit, along with Boudet, so that parlay went through. Yeah, but not too much more to say. I think everyone almost had Nunes. Who cares? It's a pick. I didn't have a bet on it. But the over 2.5 seems pretty obvious. And yeah. And our final fight, or first fight in the prelims, was Haile Alatang versus Kevin Croom. And I just turned on the TV, and I see Croom getting his ass beat. It didn't take much. He had the reach advantage, he had the size advantage, but it just took one shot, and his bell was rung. People thought it was a questionable stoppage, but when you fall face first into the canvas, the ref is going to stop the fight. It's pretty basic. I had him on some of my DraftKings fantasy teams, and they immediately died. He had 0.8 points in the fight. I don't know, it's whatever. Didn't have a lot rolling behind him. Like we said before this, there's not too much on the line for this fight. Croom, I didn't have a bet really behind him, and neither did Carson. Not surprised by the result, but yeah, quick fight. I don't think that Alatang got a bonus for that knockout either, but all right. Well, yeah, this was our post-fight reactions to Luque versus Muhammad 2. We'll try to get out our next video for predictions for next week. We'll also follow up with a betting video, hopefully. Good week for us, plus 4.13 units. That's money in the bank. Never going to lose that much, so we're still up. And check out the Instagram, and you can see us on Verdict and Tapology. And yeah, see you soon. Peace.